This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
So this is
back to the notes.
This is the very first installment of Cyber Sunday. As you mentioned, it's a variation of the old Taboo Tuesday. I like that concept, a Tuesday pay-per-view. I think it was worth a try. It's not on the traditional pay-per-view night, but even now in 2021, it seems like some of those traditions are changing. I think you guys recently announced that there'd be some Saturday shows to look forward to in 2022.
Day one.
But I do want to mention the Taboo Tuesday concept is all about we're going to let the fans be the bookers a little bit, but we are switching from a Tuesday to a Sunday. Did Tuesday really just get chalked up to, hey, it was worth a shot, but it was a failed experiment of sorts?
I don't know that it was a failed experiment. It's just a lot easier to do it on Sunday. And I think that the viewing habits of people for pay-per-view and special events, it's a lot easier to kind of wind your day down on a Sunday with pay-per-view than get home from school and work and everything else and then get geared up for a pay-per-view. Tuesday in Texas, by God. Can't forget that one.
It's something you guys tried a few times, but let's catch up where we are here. We covered No Mercy last month. It's available in the archives over at somethingtowrestle.com. And we're coming off of a Smackdown pay-per-view now to a Raw pay-per-view. Was it ever real competition between the Raw and Smackdown brands in this era?
In this era, not nearly as much. And I think that when you go way back to the purchasing of WCW, there was an air of competition. There was an air of, hey man, we want to beat you. We want to beat you. But at the same time, it gets to the point of, well, you need help from one or the other, and we are all a team after all. So it wasn't as competitive as it was. I think sometimes amongst the talent it was, but for us, it was, we were all trying to put together the best show that we possibly could.
So to launch the promotion for Cyber Sunday, we have a 3-hour Raw.
That'll never work.
That's coming off of No Mercy, and it's called the season premiere. Cena and Taker are going to be in a no contest as the champions brawl to end the show. Why do you think we never saw a full length real deal Cena Undertaker WrestleMania match? Excuse me.
How much have you had to drink today?
I've had about 18 waters. You're my 5th podcast today.
You're not drinking soda anymore, are you?
Nope. I'm off the soda, baby.
Totally?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have one a week. It's like a treat, but I'm just chugging those big old liters of water. I even got Dave Silva on it. Dave's a water chugger now.
Yeah, I'm getting there too, but see, I drink the little ones.
Yeah, I see
that.
I
have like 1 or 2 of these a day, and I save it for when I'm on air. So I can relax a little bit, just kind of pop one and relax a little bit. But as far as your question is Undertaker and Cena at WrestleMania, I don't know that timing ever really matched up. Taker and Cena, when Cena was a heel working with Taker, I think that Taker gave Cena some of his best matches and vice versa. And Taker elevated Cena to a main event level during their issues, and I just don't think it ever matched up WrestleMania time.
At the Go Home Raw, the voting is pushed very heavily, as it should be, and this is what the lineup looks like. You've got Triple H and Shawn Michaels as DX, and they're going to be taking on Edge and Randy Orton as Rated RKO, and you have 3 different options for referees: Eric Bischoff, Jonathan Coachman, or Vince McMahon. You would also see Big Show versus King Booker versus John Cena, with the fans deciding which title would be on the line. Jeff Hardy's opponent for the Intercontinental title to be chosen between Carlito, Shelton Benjamin, and Johnny Nitro. Umaga's opponent would be decided between the Sandman, Kane, and Chris Benoit. Ric Flair needs a tag team partner against the Spirit Squad, and we'll get to pick from Roddy Piper, Sergeant Slaughter, and Dusty Rhodes. And all 3 of the guys cut a promo as to why it should be them. Now, these guys are old school, and now they're trying to fit in a more modern WWE program. How did the production and scripting of these promos go down with these quote unquote old timers?
Just like everything else. Gave them a script. They went out and did it.
The main event of the Go Home Raw is between Cena and Coach. Shockingly enough, what do you know? Cena wins. And I'm curious from your perspective, is that this polling thing, which is what makes the concept unique, Cyber Sunday, is it also what makes it a tough sell because you don't know exactly what you're going to get? You're asking people to pay for something that they may want to see or they may not want to see.
Absolutely. And the intrigue is in what you could see. Yes. So you try to sell that up as much as possible. But to your point, I think there is that segment of the audience that is like, no, I want to know what I'm paying for.
Yeah.
And do I have to do work to watch this show? I got to vote? I don't know.
The only thing of note on the last ECW show before Cyber Sunday is they announced an Elimination Chamber is going to be the main event of ECW's pay-per-view in December, called December to Dismember. It's one of the worst pay-per-views in history. Go check out our WWE ECW episode in the archives. It's one of our favorite shows. Let's talk about the business end of things. The previous year's version of this Cyber Sunday show, but back then, of course, it was called Taboo Tuesday. It was headlined by Kurt Angle versus Shawn Michaels versus John Cena for the title. It's on a Tuesday, and it got 174,000 buys. This Cyber Sunday, of course, is on a Sunday, and the pay-per-view gets 228,000 buys. Is that just a function of the day of the week, do you think? Or do you think you really had that much? Go ahead.
It's a function of the day of the week. It's a function of the attraction. It's a function of the new gas station that opened up down the street. It's just who's willing to, it's all the above.
It would be easy for us to, rag on this concept because as we just said, you don't really know what you're getting when you buy it. But the show is up from No Mercy the month before. You have another 31,000 buys here than you did at No Mercy. And overall, the Wrestling Observer readers thought the show was a thumbs down, with 60% voting that way. Let's jump into the matches, and you combine all the brands of the show. So you got Raw, SmackDown, and ECW, and it also sets up the return of Vince McMahon from the Hell in a Cell match. And he's going to set up a main event between John Cena, who's the champ on Raw, Big Show, who's the ECW champ, and King Booker, who is the SmackDown champ. So we've got a brand extension here, and we're going to have all three champions face off against each other. That's pretty difficult if you're trying to present that, hey, all of the brands are on equal footing. Somebody's got to lose here, right? So somebody's going to be the inferior brand if the champion lost, right?
Not necessarily. Depends on how they lose, who they lose to, why they lose. So because you lose doesn't make you less than.
So there's a big brawl between the three. It leads to matches that were announced for that night. Big Show versus Jeff Hardy, King Booker versus Rob Van Dam, and Undertaker versus John Cena. And on Raw, all 6 announcers are used. So you got the Raw announcers, the ECW announcers, and the SmackDown announcers. And Meltzer's pretty critical of this. He says, personally, I thought it was a mess. They used all 6 announcers, and 5 of the 6 didn't appear comfortable. JBL, who carries SmackDown, was a huge negative on this show as he tried to run over everyone. Others who share my opinion of him as an announcer agreed he was bad on the show, although one source backstage said Vince is the one to blame because he controls the announcers and was probably getting off on JBL ripping on the other announcers, which to me hurt their credibility. Taz eventually came back on him, and it was entertaining, but it also led to a Booker versus Rob Van Dam match being practically ignored while these two tried to one-up each other. The worst part is even though Taz did get the better of the first grade level exchange, noting that the announcing job was the only job JBL's wife didn't get him, and that JBL kept calling Taz a midget who wasn't even good enough to wrestle in WWE. Taz says he wasn't allowed to wrestle in WWE because he was short and categorized JBL as a tall, chubby, clumsy wrestler. And JBL's big comeback was saying B13 and other references to bingo
right there.
And reference the Taz being an ECW star with the old tired bingo hall knock and claiming to have sold out Madison Square Garden. The funny part of all of this is Taz, in the grand scheme of things, was more over in ECW than JBL was in WWE, and JBL never sold out Madison Square Garden. The Smackdown house show where JBL was on top is one of the smallest 5 crowds in the past 67 years, but for obvious reasons, saying JBL never drew on top can't be said. And Taz can't claim his own ECW legacy was on the level of JBL holding a WWE version of the world title. JBL took Jerry Lawler, who was actually by far the biggest draw of the 3-color commentators, out of his game. He made fun of Joey Styles' voice and Jim Ross's face, and Ross basically ignored it and tried to call the match. JBL's announcing is controversial, and that I like it on SmackDown, but more than half of the wrestlers that I hear from are very negative, feeling he goes into business for himself to the detriment of the storylines and characters and matches. Even Taz acknowledged the biggest criticism when he told JBL to get the talent over instead of trying to get himself over, to which JBL responded in character that an announcing God gets himself over naturally. So a lot to unpack here. The gist is JBL is stirring it up on the mic. And I've always been under the impression that he was really Vince's mouthpiece, that if Vince had a thought, if Vince had a feeling, if Vince had an opinion, he would pipe it into JBL's headset and JBL would espouse it. How much of this really is JBL and how much of this is Vince having fun?
I'd say it's probably 70-30 JBL. And because look, that's John's job, is to be a controversial mouthpiece at the desk. I mean, that's what he did. He was controversial. He was meant to stir shit up. So that was his job. That was his character. And that's what he did.
What'd you think of this, infighting and 6 announcers on the
show? Look, man, realistically, a 2-man booth is the best, pretty much in anything from, football, wrestling, baseball. It's hard to distinguish. You get beyond 2 guys that have any kind of chemistry at all. You get used to it, you get comfortable with it, and they can tell you stories without stepping on each other. You add a 3rd man into the booth, much less, oh God. I mean, a 3-man booth is difficult, and I don't think the greatest thing in the world. But, any more than that, it just waters everything down and makes it difficult for anybody to get a word edgewise. Could you imagine having 6 of us
No.
on right now trying to do a show?
No.
It'd be horrible.
Raw goes up against the NFL and the UFC on Spike, and the rating comes in as a disappointment. So that's the reason we're pulling out all the big guns here. You go from a 3.8, which has 5.03 million viewers, and it's only up 0.2 from the week before. So we're pulling out all the stops, but still, when people are saying, oh, it's a disappointment, it's over 5 million folks, Bruce. That's a hell of a crowd.
Yeah, and I don't view it as a disappointment. I don't know who viewed it as a disappointment, but I don't think we did.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.